Welcome to Unboxing Logistics. I'm your host, Lori Boyer of EasyPost. Today, we are going to be diving into two of the most massive, hair-pulling, and just all together irritating challenges that every single person in the industry has to deal with. But we're especially focusing today on our SMBs, our e-commerce market. We're going to be talking about managing labor challenges and managing inventory challenges. So important. I know I've heard from so many of you that these are just a big problem. So I have brought on Steve Syverson from NFI eCom to teach us a little bit about what we can do to manage these challenges. Steve, can you introduce yourself a little bit and tell us a little bit about your background?
Yeah, of course, Lori. Thanks for having me today. I'm excited to be here with the EasyPost team. So, again, my name is Steve Syverson. I'm the Senior Director of E-commerce Customer Solutions here at NFI eCom. My background has been in the logistics supply chain space for about the past 22 years. A majority of that time was with FedEx in various sales roles and specifically working in the SMB mid-market space. The last 10 years in e-commerce alone. So I've got a background in launching micro-fulfillment centers, critical inventory logistics, building sales teams, launching new product lines. So I've got a great background, I think, to discuss some of the challenges SMBs face today. So again, thanks for having me.
That's incredible. You should be Steve, who has done it all, Syverson. It sounds like 22 years. That's incredible. So I'm really excited for the insights that our audience is going to be able to pick up from today. But before we get going, I just wanted to ask, we've been this season asking one question to each of our guests, and I've gotten so many ideas from this. So what, Steve, is your go-to comfort food?
Go-to comfort food. I would say, wow, my wife will kill me, but probably like a really good meatball sub.
Oh, okay. First, why will your wife kill you?
Because she just probably wouldn't want me to eat it, but I would say a meatball sub. Yeah. I got a pizza. Pizza's a very close second, but yeah.
I was going to say, pizza's always one that I can go for, that warm, but boy, a meatball sub sounds great. So do you like to make your meatball subs at home, or would you pick one up at a restaurant?
Yeah, I have a couple go-to places.
Okay, so team, if you're out there, you're hitting up Pittsburgh, Steve's the guy to get you that meatball sub. I love it. So as we dive into our topic today, I'm really excited. I want to hear, if somebody is listening today and they only come away with one or two or three things, what are the most important thing you would want them to remember from today's episode?
I would say at this point, really understanding their customer and demand and leveraging technology as an SMB. I'm not even leveraging, I would say embracing technology. And I think lastly, I would say find a good peer or association group to get involved with and understand. It will save them so much time and pain because someone inevitably has been down the path they're looking at and they know the good and bad that comes out of that. So,
okay, brilliant. Love them. I'm going to ask you a couple of questions real quick on each of those. So you said understand your customer demand, and I was interested in that. How do you feel? Is there a difference between understanding your customer, just kind of their demographic and who they are, and your customer demand? What is the difference between those two?
Yeah, I think they need to look at industry trends. So understanding their customer, they should know who they're going after, right? What's the demographic that's buying from them? Let's just say it's a lifestyle apparel brand. Most likely they built their company around the type of individual they're looking to sell to. And then how do they do that? So trying to forecast that demand, I think, is really looking at the industry. What's happening with, if it is apparel, we use that as an example. What's going on in that industry? Right now, the biggest thing going on is the 3-2-1 and the provisions by the current administration, what's happening there. So if I'm an apparel customer, that greatly impacts my operation, my demand, what is going on with that space, how it impacts me, how do I pivot, all those different things. So I think there's a lot of variability with that, but really understanding the demand from their customer, what do they see down the road? And I think I talk about technology, really leveraging some of the new AI tools, predictive analytic tools that are out there to help them doing that. Looking at historical data from sales. Why are customers buying? Why are they winning? So all those things factor in and help them kind of understand what the demand would be in the future.
Okay, I love that. And I thought it was interesting how you switched from, for your number two, you said it was about technology. You kind of switched from leveraging technology to embracing technology. How do you see those as different?
Yeah, so I think there's a lot of really cool tools out there and platforms, and I think people want to adopt them, but they don't really know how to use them effectively and what's the best fit for their company. There's so many different features of service, but likely SMBs don't need all of those. So I think establishing what you're trying to accomplish with that tool before you actually go out and implement or adopt a platform makes a huge difference. And there's opportunities aplenty out there. There's tons of providers, but really, what's the best fit for your business? How does it align with your goals and what you're trying to accomplish with your brand?
And so it sounds like one of the things I'm hearing from you is you've really got to understand yourself, understand your customers. You just had to have a really good knowledge. Some people get a little bit of the surface level and kind of take off, and that runs into problems. Any suggestions around those peer groups, how to develop those relationships? Because I completely agree with you, especially if you're talking SMB. This is critical.
Yeah, great question. So, there's a number of ways you can get involved in those. LinkedIn is always a good platform to try to find out like-minded businesses or groups that you can associate with. So I would say join some of those, get involved with those. Also, conferences are a great way to meet people that are doing something very similar to you. I leverage those quite a bit in our business, and a lot of those just become relationships over time. A lot of these strategic partnerships that you form or alliances over time make a huge difference for your business. And again, it goes back to a lot of people have lived through maybe what you're experiencing for the first time, and they can share that, save you a lot of time and pain. And they can share best practices as well. Peer groups are a great platform to do that. But I would say conferences and LinkedIn are a great way.
Yeah, and just reach out to people. You may be surprised. There are times when you can shoot an email to someone that you've seen on LinkedIn, or you can send them a message, and they may be happy to chat with you and mentor. So just don't be afraid. I love that. So let's talk about growing. So I think for this audience in particular, growth is a constant battle. They may start small and they may have, grown. Hopefully their goal is to grow to the point where they're, established and larger. What are some of the biggest challenges that you've seen over the last 22 years of, especially when it comes to logistics? That's a really big pain point for our SMBs.
Today we're talking about labor and inventory. How do you manage those? Those are really big hurdles for SMBs in this space. So, I'll give you some of the challenges first, and then maybe some of the ways to get around those. From a labor perspective, it's very hard to hire people, especially in today's climate. So how do you do that as you're scaling your brand? I would say if you've got your teammates and you have a kind of steady state business, you're looking to grow at that point. I would consider using agencies or looking to outsource because you can really extend your team quite a bit and overwork them. So I would look at vetting agencies.
Is there a point, Steve, where you feel like, okay, this is the tipping point of maybe when I should start looking at agencies and outsourcing?
Yeah, I would think when you get a sense that your staff is overworked,
Okay.
when you extend too far, when you have people doing multiple jobs, they tend not to do each one of them very well,
Yeah.
or at the highest level. So I think as a business owner, a brand owner, you need to be involved and understand, is my staff now stretched too thin? Am I exposed? What kind of risk do I have? If people get sick, if a new DC opens in the same area, are they going to pull staff away? All those different things. So that's certainly a big one. On the technology front, there's so many different platforms you can have to increase efficiencies, to make sure you're managing labor effectively, using predictive models to create efficiencies, to increase accuracy. your overall goal is to create a positive customer experience for the person that's on the end getting that package. So how do I do that? What are the things I have to do internally, manage? What kind of risk do I need to mitigate to make that happen? I always focus on the CX and customer experience. Everything I do behind the scenes, they don't see. They just know that they got the right item, they got the right order when they wanted to have it, and it was a great customer experience, and you want them to buy again. So I think there's a lot of variables that come into play with that.
So I know labor is just a big challenge in general. So I'm going to kind of back it up a little bit with our labor. So do you have suggestions for, first of all, how to create, especially, I think, Steve, as we're into peak season and stress goes up and customer expectations. This is something for our, unboxing logistics family out there. I hope you know that during peak season, customer expectations actually rise when it comes to shipping and logistics and everything. So during your most stressful time is also the time when people have the highest expectations for you to be performing well. All of this leads to a lot of stress and challenge on your workers that you do have. So do you have suggestions for kind of keeping morale high, for, creating a good work environment first for the labor that you have? And then we'll talk a little bit more about, the labor you don't have, the outsourcing and whatnot.
Yeah, so I think there's a number of ways you can do that. And these are the things that we've done here at NFI as well. So you want to create an environment where everybody feels they have an opportunity to be successful. So you also want to create an opportunity for bonuses. Maybe there's some merit-based opportunity. Maybe you have some in-house parties. You have pizza brought in. You have a cookout. You just create a little bit different environment that feels outside, especially during peak, feels outside of what the normal day-to-day is. Because there is an increased demand, there's increased stress. We've offered flexible work schedules to people if they need, maybe not during that time, but post-peak. If you do this, then in January or February, we'll give you an option to take, a day off or an extra weekend or things like that. So my message would be creative. Don't disrupt your operation. Keep everyone engaged, but create an environment where they're all working towards the same goal. They feel good about it. They feel like they're part of the team, and then offer some different creative ways, different options for them, either a flex work schedule or parties or bringing in food. We have customers every year during peak that host food for us, and they'll pay for it.
We all love food, Steve.
Yeah, we'll have pizza days, we'll have a cookout, and a lot of our clients will pay for that. They'll cover it because they know that our teammates are going above and beyond, and I've done that with other companies. So I would say get creative, think differently about it. Don't layer on more stress on your teammates. They're already stressed. I think your job as an owner of a brand or a business is to kind of carry that and figure out ways to mitigate some of that stress, some of that pain. Because at the end of the day, you want them to perform at their highest level because your customer is what matters.
That brought a thought to me, Steve, as you said that, about, you want to make sure that you're creating, as the owner, as the, driver of this business, the right atmosphere. I think sometimes as the owner, we get stressed out, and that may convey down as well. What are your thoughts on, I guess, how does the owner themselves impact the morale based on when they are stressed out?
Yeah, I mean, and I've seen this, if you're the leader, I think you need to be the calm person in all of it, even though you may experience a storm yourself. So
inside you're freaking out.
I don't, my advice would be, and this is really pretty obvious, but don't put that on your team. They can't feel that. They shouldn't feel the opposite. They should feel like we're succeeding, we're doing a great job, the business is growing. This is a great long-term opportunity for all of us. But I would say as an owner, take steps before peak to mitigate some of this risk. Develop relationships with suppliers, with agencies that gives you flexibility. So when you need to call or ask for a favor or for options with your supplier or any of the local vendors, you have that option to do that. You can't do it during peak. You've got to put the time in before. Yeah.
Almost upon us. We're here in Q4. So let's say you're going about your day. You have a fantastic sale or even just a surprising spike. This is going to hit over into inventory as well, but you've got a big sale that happened and woohoo, wow, sales went through the roof. Some of your best people are suddenly sick. What are your suggestions? You mentioned creating relationships. Just how do you manage this when you're suddenly experiencing a labor shortage?
Yeah, I mean, I go back to again, you have to have you have to take some steps in advance of this. If you haven't done that, I think that's what you're asking. Now I'm stuck, right? I've got a product that just went viral because some influencer wore my hat, t-shirt at the beach. Now you're like, what do I do? With your current staff, you have some people out, you're going to have to ask them to maybe work a weekend. You're going to have to pay them a little bit differently. Again, get creative with options. If you work this weekend, 2 weeks from now, you can take a 3-day week or whatever it may be. But I would say effectively communicate early and follow up on what you say you're going to do. If you're going to give them options, if you're going to be flexible with them, make sure you follow up and do that. Don't extend promises you can't keep. And again, if you have to go to an outside agency, I would stress vet them before, make sure they're reputable. There's a lot that aren't, unfortunately, some of these smaller staffing companies. I would keep a short list as you go throughout the year, make that part of your planning, create a short list of agencies, staffing companies that you trust, that are vetted, that you can go to. In this scenario, hopefully you can call them and say, I need 5 people for a Sunday. What can we do? How do I do that? But again, without the advanced work, it's a challenge for sure. So use your existing staff. I go back to technology. This is why you need technology. You need to leverage that. That will create efficiencies, reduce errors. It'll be predictive for you on shipping, on anything like that. Leverage automation anywhere you can. Reduces the amount of staff you need. There's no magic bullet for I need 10 people on a Sunday. There just isn't. Get creative and leverage what you have, and try to create an environment where they feel like if they do X, they can get Z at some point.
Yeah, I think that, so you touched on a couple of, I think, really key things there. Technology, automation, that really can be your best friend. When it doesn't mean you have to fire your staff or that you need fewer people, but it makes their jobs a lot easier, and it's a lot easier to handle. They don't mind. Technology doesn't mind working 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.
Right.
But also, it reminded me when you said, the peer networks that you mentioned earlier. This may be the time, if you don't know a good agency, if haven't developed those relationships. Steve is so on the nose that you need to do this before peak. If you're listening today and you haven't done it, as soon as this episode ends, please start reaching out to your network, figure out what agencies you're going to use, put into place whatever you can right now to develop that. But I think reaching out to those peers, again, as you said, they've been there before, they've done it, they've handled it.
Yeah, and ask them that very question, right? How are you handling this? I'm sure you've experienced this. What happened last peak? How do I mitigate my risk? Do you have any suggestions? That people will jump in. They're really supportive.
So good. So good. This is a very relationship heavy industry, and people are really good about helping one another. Steve, so I know I can just hear our community out there saying, Lori, what about cost? Cost, cost, cost. Some of these things are sounding a little expensive. How do we balance sort of the cost management piece with your labor?
I would again go back to technology. You need to look at what your historical sales are and what you think your demand will be. That really helps you plan your labor. Make sure you're paying competitive wages, but not overpaying. Make sure you're not, maybe adding one additional teammate versus having everyone work overtime on a consistent basis is a better option for you. Again, go to your peer group and say, how are you handling this? What is the right time to add additional staff, or is now the time to adopt a technology that will help me create efficiencies, increase accuracy, look for redundant tasks that I can automate. Maybe I don't need an additional person, right? Maybe I invest in this technology and it helps me leverage that to do things. There's a lot of redundant tasks within a warehouse in a fulfillment center that you can automate. So again, ask people, how are they doing it? If you're starting to entertain a technology platform, a warehouse management system, an order management system that's a little bit more robust than like a ship station, for example, and your business starting to scale, really look at what features are important to you and see how those align with your business growth goals. Because there's a lot of feature rich platforms out there, but you don't need all of it. And maybe you can phase that in, right? Talk to the provider and say, you know, is this a cloud-based solution first and foremost? Does this provide me scalable, flexible solutions within my network? How does it integrate? Is it scalable? And what is the cost to do that? And then what kind of support network do you have for this platform? Those are important things.
Yeah, absolutely. I love the I just can't say this enough for this audience is looking at technology that will grow with you, that has the features available you'll need in 5 years, but also you don't necessarily need to pay for them now. You know, all of that, that it's going to just scale and grow with you. I also really loved how you mentioned in the warehouse, talking to people about bottlenecks, because I feel like sometimes we forget, you know, especially you're the owner and you're busy. And I heard someone call it once staying in the ivory tower a little too often. And sometimes we need to be boots on the ground in the warehouse, looking for those bottlenecks and where are those slowdowns and where can you automate and where do you need to train people. The people in and who are there doing it every day are the ones who know.
Yeah, no, I love that. I am a huge proponent of walking the floor, being out there. You know, if you're an owner of a brand, if you don't know every process from receiving, put away, to then the order, fulfillment, the pack out, and the shipment of that product, and then the reverse returns piece, you're doing yourself a disservice. You should know everything from A to Z in your operation. Talk to your people, as you said, create a feedback mechanism, meet with the teammates monthly, understand what's going on in your operation. Because the easiest thing to say is, I just need to add staff. I need to throw labor at it. That is normally not the best thing to do. Almost in every scenario, it's probably the last thing you should do. Look for opportunities to gain efficiencies within the existing operation, listen to your teammates, and embrace some technology to do that. What's the right fit? So really, I look at what the problem is, what's the root cause, and then I start to align what is the solution for that? What's the best solution today? And then how do I scale that over time?
Yeah. Oh, that was so good. Yeah, I love that. The whole blurb from Steve of, you know, just throwing new employees at the problem is not usually the answer, almost never. Sometimes it exacerbates the problem instead. So totally brilliant. Let's talk inventory, Steve. Why is inventory management specifically just such a headache for those in this kind of sphere?
Yeah. Yeah, this is such a broad topic. Really, and I'll tell you on my experience. What I see with SMBs typically is they tend to overbuy or overestimate demand, which puts them in a really tough position from an inventory perspective. And I think what goes along with that, some of the overbuying, the drivers for that are just the per unit cost. If I buy a lot, I pay less per unit. It helps my balance sheet. Things look better. But now I've overestimated demand and I've overbought, and I only have a 5,000 square foot space. What do I do now? Now I put my employees in a position where they're moving boxes around to get to another box, and it becomes a checkerboard, which is never good. Creates a whole host of issues and inefficiencies. But it's overbuying or overestimating demand, and then not having an inventory tracking system, or at least an effective one through technology to manage my inventory. So to me, visibility and insights are absolutely paramount into your inventory. If you don't have that, I find it hard to believe you'll succeed long term. And I've seen so many just negative impacts from someone not having an inventory management system, not having a warehouse management system, not understanding what they have. You have scenarios where you have stockouts or you've sold items you don't have, and you may not even have them ordered yet. Technology provides a stopgap for that. When I set up my WMS, I have my entire product catalog, my inventory within that system, and I can set alerts or parameters. When it hits a certain inventory level, it'll auto reorder, or there'll be an alarm, or someone gets a message down to 100 units, time to reorder. Anything. But without those insights, without the technology platform, some mechanism to track all of that, you're setting yourself up for failure because you're just not going to know what you have. And again, going all the way back to the CX, if that's not creating a bad customer experience, I don't know what is, right? As a consumer, you order something and you expect it, it's not showing sold out or back order on a website. I expect it in a few days. Now I have to go back to the customer. That's costing me money. I have my team calling a customer. It's not a positive experience. And I get to tell them, hey, I won't even have it for a month. So now you've lost a customer long term. So some of those things sound a little bit simple, but things like stockouts are an absolute nightmare.
So, Steve, then so stockouts, huge challenge. But on the flip side, you said one of the biggest mistakes you see is people overbuying. So, how do you, I guess, which is worse in your opinion first? Overbuying or having a stockout? Put that on you.
Yeah. So obviously they both impact your balance sheet, but I would
Yeah.
say I think having a stockout is probably worse because my
Okay.
customer on the doesn't know that I overbought. That's a bad decision on my part. Now I just
Yeah.
tied up a lot of cash. But to me, again, everything on the customer, that to me is more of a negative.
Okay.
If I saw something available on your website, I expect that I'll receive it. Overbuying, that's inventory. Now I have to figure out how to manage that. Again, go back to tracking. Now I have much extra touch points within my warehouse or my facility to move things around. If it's seasonal, what do you do with that stuff? If you overbought it, now you have 10,000 extra units that's summer. Now you're going into fall. Now you're going to hold that for a whole nother year. I've seen SMBs and say, oh my God, I just took down a 20 by 20 storage unit for excess inventory that I'm paying $250 a month for. Again, not cracked. I don't even know what's really in there. I have to open up boxes and do that. So there's just so many issues without it. And my message is leverage some sort of tech platform to do that. If you want to scale your business, if you want to grow your business effectively, efficiently, I would suggest investing in that or
Okay. So,
partnering with a 3PL
yeah.
that has that technology in place today. You
Right.
know, leave it. I say it all the time. Leave it to the experts. You
Hmm.
know, I talk to brand owners every week, and none of them say I really love the process of receiving goods, putting them away, and then fulfilling orders and shipping them out. None of them ever say that.
Yeah.
If they do, I probably wouldn't believe it. But
Yeah.
um, I say leave it to the experts. Leave it to the people that have the buildings, that already
Yeah.
have technology in place, that already have a staff that's trained, that understands it. You benefit from the economies of scale within those fulfillment centers. They also have preferred shipping rates, right? Which you probably can't get on your own. So
Yeah, yeah, for sure. There are a lot of options out there that small businesses don't realize you can use others and lean on. Again, we talked about those peer groups, but there is a lot of expertise out there that can help you. One of the things that I was thinking of as you were talking was about inventory accuracy. So you can have all the technology you want, but if it's not accurate, so what tools, I guess, would you suggest early on? Let's say that Steve decided to set up his own business. You had a somewhat small warehouse. What tools, what ways are you ensuring that your inventory counts are accurate?
yeah, I would again get a technology platform that is very good at that. And I'm not going to name specific companies or commercials, but anybody can follow up with me. I'd be happy to have a one-off conversation if they want to talk through those. But it's really capturing that data on the receiving end of it. Because if it doesn't come in and it's not captured correctly, the rest of it is really garbage coming out. It's never going to be accurate. So, as a business owner, I would say focus on the intake, the receiving of those goods. Make sure your vendor is delivering what they said. Make sure it's marked correctly. So you think you're putting away a certain style, size. Make sure that's what it is. Check your inventory, but make sure you're capturing the right information on the receiving piece of that. And then that's being logged in. So whatever mechanism you have, it's a barcode that you're scanning. Uh, if it's something that you've already set up in your system and your product catalog is already established, those SKUs and number of units need to coincide with what you receive. That's the only real way to capture that on the front end. If that's not right, then the rest of it's going to be a real challenge for you.
massive challenge. I love that piece of advice to focus on the receiving, because sometimes people do get confused and when should I be paying most attention? Okay, so we've talked about, contracting out, moving things over, using a 3PL, for instance. So let's say that I think, okay, or Steve had his amazing business. You're now thinking, I need help. This is a lot of work. What things should kind of the SMB type size business be looking for when they're going to a 3PL? Contracts. What is common in the industry? What should they expect?
Yeah. So I think I'll go to the front end of this and say, as a brand, kind of what they see. The biggest hurdle I see is the loss of control for an SMB. So they've typically homegrown this business and they have it, maybe by their house or within a couple miles, somewhere they can drive to every day and look at that inventory.
They
That
can
is
go at night and pet their little stuffed animal. It's hard to let that go.
completely understand. So that loss of control, perceived loss of control, is a big hurdle for brands to get over. But based on my experience, once they do that and they make that leap, they've identified a 3PL or a partner that they feel good about, that they trust, that's established, that has a great reputation. They are so happy. They never look back because now it's given them the ability to scale their business. And they're focused on going to shows, to conferences, building strategic partnerships, working with new vendors, finding new manufacturers, all those different things they should be doing as a business owner, and then marketing their brand and growing that. So, I always say the 3PL, whoever your partner is that you choose, they should be almost invisible to you. It should be, I just know my inventory is going there and my orders are being fulfilled accurately and on time. And they're providing me a service that I feel really good about at a competitive rate. That's the way that relationship should be. Flip side of that, the 3PL or partners should be very proactive. So as you're looking at different partners, find one that has a track record, that has history of being proactive with their customers, and then ask them to kind of demonstrate that. Help me understand how you've done that for a brand. Let me talk to them. Do you simply just push out information, but you don't offer any solutions, anything forward looking? That's always a problem. And I hear that quite a bit.
So they're okay saying to the 3PL, hey, can I talk to some of your other current customers and see what their experience is? You recommend that?
Let me talk to some companies that are my size. What have you done for them? You told me you do all these things. Now help me talk to someone, right? Help me get in touch with them. I think that's always good to do. And if a 3PL is resistant to that, there's normally a reason, like any buying decision. So, but things I should look for: what technology platform that they're on today. Does it align with the goals? Is it overkill? Is it not enough? What kind of support do you have for it? Where are your locations? How many locations do you have? What capacity are you in today? For example, if you talk to a 3PL and they have one location in the middle of Arkansas and your customers are all over the country and they're at 85% capacity and you have a growing brand, it's probably not a great fit for you.
Okay, so location, number of warehouses, capacity that they have, the type
Yes.
of capabilities, the technology they use, the being able to talk to other customers. These are all really good specific things you should look at. In addition, Steve, what about customer support? So not just if you as the SMB have problems, but if your customers have problems with their package, like what is typical for a 3PL to offer?
Yeah, so some of the smaller ones, even the larger ones, you'll find a customer success manager, an account manager. Typically, they won't be a one-for-one scenario, but an account manager or someone assigned to your account will have multiple accounts and they'll support it. What my advice would be is do not have an expectation of the brand that they're going to do everything for your account. They're not going to manage your business for you. They're likely not going to track packages for you. I think there's opportunities where brands say, I can just outsource everything and they're going to do everything because I did it. That's typically not the case. They're going to offer solutions for you. They're going to be your liaison between operations and your business. They're going to make suggestions if there's some efficiency gains, if there's opportunities to change packaging, change shipping methods, things like that. They'll make recommendations and they will help you resolve issues. But I wouldn't consider them your outsourced customer service person.
Okay, so you need to still own that customer. It goes back to what you were saying at the beginning, Steve, understanding your customer demand, understanding your customers themselves. All of that is still and forever and ever going to be a crucial part of running your business.
That will never change, absolutely. And they're typically not going to talk directly with your customer, nor do you probably want them to. Right?
Okay.
They're not your brand. They work for the 3PL. Their job is to make sure things run efficiently in the operation and make recommendations to you to help facilitate that. But you want to keep that brand connection as the company or as the.
Okay, so let's just talk really quickly future trends. What do you see? Steve looks at his crystal ball. What do you see coming down the line when it comes to labor, inventory management? What do you predict for the future?
Yeah, I mean, we've had this flexible workforce, I think, for a long time now. People are getting used to that. So I think that the evolution of that is uh, more regional type players that are doing that in market. Seeing some of that, I'm seeing a big push for automation and AI tools to do this, to manage labor and inventory. That really comes down to understanding your data. It's all about trying to be predictive on what's going to happen. And that's such a buzzword, right? How do you do that? Nobody can really predict the future, but you can leverage data, and there's platforms that can help you do that to help you understand what demand is. How do I plan for this? But I go back to this is not technology based, but developing those relationships in your slower periods. So now, as you get into your peak periods, your high volume growth periods, you've got the relationships, you've got your short list. But now I'm also leveraging data AI tools to help me plan. All those things together work really well. I cloud-based technology for flexibility. You need to be able to access this data anywhere. So if anyone's trying to push a solution that is an on-prem type solution, it's not cloud-based, it's not on handhelds, you can access it anywhere. I would probably shy away from that for so many reasons. But yeah, I mean, I think those are the big ones. I think AI tools, predictive analytics, look into those things. Use technology as an ally. Don't be afraid of it. Don't be afraid to embrace it. But again, go back and ask people. Go to chat forums. Go to these groups and say, who's used this? Has anyone used this platform before? What kind of gains did you see in your business? What kind of challenges did you have? You'll be doing yourself a disservice if you don't do that.
I love that. The two biggest takeaways I got from you today that I am going to remember for a long time. Number one, we've got to use technology in order to be able to efficiently scale, but also the human relationships are just as important. And so to be focusing on both those soft skills and the technical skills at the same time is really going to be super important. So that is awesome. We've learned so much. I want to hear, though, before we go, because we're just about out of time, a little bit about NFI. A little bit about NFI eCom. Can you tell us, Steve, what NFI is, what services you provide?
Sure, be happy to. So, NFI Industries is a $4 billion company, privately held, about 92 years old at this point, headquartered in New Jersey. We have about 73 million square feet in the U.S. and Canada. So, I think today we're the fourth largest 3PL in the country. Of that 4 billion, our distribution, warehousing, and e-commerce is about 1.4 billion of that. So it's a significant piece of the business. We work with some of the largest retailers, global brands in the world doing warehousing, distribution, e-commerce fulfillment, and reverse logistics as well. We also have a large port services group. We've got cross-docking teams. We have brokerage teams. We do a lot of ocean freight, air freight as well. We also have an in-house real estate group. So you think about 73 million square feet. Someone has to manage that. Someone has to constantly look for new spaces. And I should say, as a brand, if you look to partner with someone, look for someone who has a footprint, somebody that can scale your business. I like to say all the time that it would be impossible to outgrow NFI for any brand. We go from 3 million to 500 million. That customer journey would be with NFI without hesitation within our network. So
yeah, I love that infrastructure. That's having that infrastructure in place is huge.
yeah, NFI e-commerce, we focus solely with NFI has large global brands. that we do that for, but NFI eCom and my team focuses solely on the SMB mid-market space. My entire team has worked in this space for 10 plus years. We know our customers very well. We know this customer segment very well. We're extremely proactive in the brands we work with. We love to help them scale. We love to be consultative, such a fun part of this job, and provide solutions. It makes sense for them, being privately held. We make decisions on what's best for our customers, not shareholders or bankers. So it makes a huge difference. And we're a very hands-on company. Our leadership team, incredibly involved. You could ask any of my customers today. They've talked with our CEO, CFO before many times. So we love our customers. But yeah, great company. Love to help anybody out that might need an option for fulfillment.
Awesome. Thank you so much. So, Steve, if they do want to reach out, if they're interested in connecting with you, maybe just getting insights, following you if you're on LinkedIn or something, or, if they want to learn more about NFI, how can they connect with you?
Sure. You can find me at steve.syverson@nfiindustries.com. This is my email. LinkedIn, just search my name, Steve Syverson, under NFI. I do a lot of work on LinkedIn. Or check out our website, nfiecom.com.
That sounds perfect. Well, thank you so much for being here. We've learned so much, and it's been just a fantastic time. I appreciate you being here.
Thank you, Lori. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me.
See you, everyone.